Welcome everybody, I'm Jeremy John, and I want to take you into the fascinating world of tour guiding. Every day in London, you'll find eccentric personalities guiding people in the footsteps of history. Some show historic architecture to overseas visitors, while others bring history to life for school groups. All the best tour guides have one thing in common. They know how to tell a good story. And that's why I started this podcast, to capture the stories of these tour guides. You will find out what drew them to this profession. You will discover which sites they love the most. And you will hear the secret methods they use to make history come alive. Today I have two guides on the show. They are specifically black cab tour guides. I have Danny McIntyre.
Hello, Jeremy.
And I have Greg Smith.
Hello, Jeremy.
Now, these two black cab tour guides are going to be going into what it's like to be driving people around London. We're going to be going into what tours they give and the uniqueness of being a black cab driver, because it takes quite a few years doing something called the knowledge, and they're going to tell me much more about that. Let me start, though, by going into what types of tours they do. Danny, I'd like to start with you. Danny, what kind of tours do you do in your black cab?
One of the most popular tours I do in my black cab is a classic London tour where you get to see all the main sites in London and also sites that even Londoners, I think, don't even know about. And we literally drive from one part of the city to the other end of the city to get a great overview. Other tours I do are places like the Cotswolds, Bath, Stonehenge. So we actually go outside of London. But one of my most favourite tours is the famous Jack the Ripper tour by Black Cab.
Thank you for that, Danny. And Greg, can you tell me about which tours you give?
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, very similar to what Danny has just mentioned, but I'll add my favourite, which I've just finished today, is the Beatles Tour London, and also Downton Abbey tour that does touch the Cotswolds as well.
Lovely stuff. I believe you give other tours as well, don't you, Greg? I've seen you all over the place.
Yeah, so Harry Potter, classic London, Downton Abbey in London, Stonehenge, Bath, all the places.
I don't think there's anywhere you haven't been in your black cab, is there?
I've been to quite a few places. I'll take it all on.
All right. I want to now find out about what led you into becoming a black cab driver, and from there, how you ended up becoming a black cab tour guide.
Well, funny enough, Jeremy, starting off during my school years, I didn't do that great in school. In fact, I didn't read that many books. And through my 20s, I was working my local supermarket, and you get to the age of 30 and you think, right, life is hitting me right now. What am I going to do? So one day, my mother came into my room and said, why don't you do the knowledge? And so I thought, yeah, that sounds good. Didn't actually have a clue what it entailed, but I thought, yeah, that sounds good.
Just for the listeners, what is the knowledge, Danny?
So the Knowledge of London is a topographical exam for literally learning all the streets in London. You have to learn around 20,000 streets and up to 10,000 points of interest. Including with that, you have to learn up to 320 different routes going from point A to B across London. Then you're ready for your exams.
Most cab drivers spend about 3, sometimes 4, even 5 years learning the knowledge, right?
That's correct. So on average, they say about 4 years, depending on your circumstances. So sometimes you can do the knowledge full time if you don't have many responsibilities at home. And sometimes you can complete in 2 years. But the average time, let's give or take, is about 4 years.
Thanks, Danny. Now, let's dive back into your story. So we had to clarify that because that's what your mother suggested you should do.
Exactly, yeah.
It wasn't, oh, do you know what? Maybe you need a haircut or something like that. It was so full-on intense years and years of study.
The funny thing is, at that time I was a little bit unhappy because I was a bit lost and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I thought I'd give it a try. It was a very practical thing, learning the knowledge, actually, because what you have to do is go out on a moped. And so you'd have to go out on the streets and then you come back, revise them rows that you've just learned and also the points of interest. Once I passed the knowledge after 3.5 years, I then became a London taxi driver. After that, as soon as I became a London taxi driver, I quickly found out how face-to-face you are with customers.
What year was that, by the way, that you...
So that was in 2017.
So 8 years ago at the time of our recording now, yeah.
Yeah. And you realise how face-to-face you are with customers, which is something you don't learn on the knowledge. Because on the knowledge, you only know the roads. But what they do test you in the knowledge, also the examiners, is your temperament. And I'm sure Greg will tell you some of the stories of how the examiners can be quite rude to the students that take on the knowledge. One exam I went into, the gentleman went by the name of Mr. Thomas. He called me into his office and asked me how I was and how's my week been. And then he went on to say, could you keep your voice down a little bit? You're giving me a bit of a headache. I said, okay, sir, no problem. So then he's asked me the first question. And as I'm saying the road names, he's putting his fingers to his lips and going, shh. So literally I was whispering the answers. Now, I don't think he cared about the route I was taking that day. I think he just wanted to see if he could get a rise out of me. And thankfully he didn't. And then I was able to pass that particular exam.
So tell us about when you started driving people around London for the first time. So back in 2017 we're talking, yeah?
Yeah. My first ever job was from Hackney Road to Old Street. And Greg knows what happens here, because on your first job, it's commonly known as that you give it away for free. So lucky for me, it was only a 5-minute trip down the road.
Last thing you want is to get a Heathrow.
Heathrow, yeah.
Oh, okay. Just to clarify, what's the deal with the first one being for free? Is
It's
that
meant
just
to
an
be-
old tradition?
For good luck to start your career off, give your first ride away for free, start off on a good footing, good bit of luck.
Okay, so yours was a short run, so you didn't miss out on too much.
It was a short one. The first day was a right buzz. I hardly earned any money that day because I think I was ringing my mother every 5 minutes saying, I can't believe this is so good.
Was your mum saying, I told you so?
Yes,
3.5 years ago, I told you.
You know, oh, Dad. It was a right buzz. But the one thing I was surprised with was how face-to-face with customers you are, even though you got your back to them the whole time. And what I mean by that is the amount of questions you get asked by customers. Questions like, what's that statue? What's that building? What's that monument there for? And I didn't really know the answer, if I'm being honest with you, Jeremy. Did not know the answers. And so I started picking up books, history books, and learning more about London. Now, the reason why I got into tour guiding was because just before the pandemic, there was a course offered to London taxi drivers. It was from the Worshipful Company of Hackney Carriage Drivers. And it was a 10-week course. And it was basically learning London taxi drivers who had passed the knowledge of London to teach them how to become tour guides. Now, it was a 10-week course where on a Wednesday, you would go up to the Old Museum of London by the Rotunda, just by the Barbican Estate there. And you would be given a lecture for a couple of hours about architecture, Roman history, the Great Fire of London, the Great Plague. And then on the weekend, we were taken round by a walking guide around different areas of London, from places like Southwark, Clerkenwell, Mayfair. And the course that I was with taxi drivers who had been taxi drivers for 30 to 40 years. And this guide was showing these taxi drivers stuff they had never seen before. And this is what really brought my fascination even more forward in terms of London history, because there's so much more to unearth.
So basically, the story starts with your mother saying, go and do this grueling thing that's going to take years. You did it. She was proved right, and you phoned her on that first drive going, Mum, you were right, effectively. And then your interest was piqued in the history because people actually in the cab would ask you stuff and you didn't have a clue what it was. So that sort of got you researching and then got you signing up to this course. What happened after you completed that course?
Well, when I completed the course, I don't know what happened, but in terms of why I made this next decision. But one of your previous guests, Richard Jones, he happened to be my next door neighbour for about 30 odd years when I lived with my mum and dad.
Just to clarify for the listeners, this isn't a surreal coincidence. The fact that I've got Danny on here is because Richard Jones actually recommended him. Otherwise, that would be an eerie coincidence. Go ahead, please.
I hadn't spoken to him for a couple of years. I was friends with him on Facebook and Instagram, but the reason I hadn't spoken to him for a few years, I met my wife and had children, and I kind of lost contact with him. So anyway, I got back in contact with him and I explained I did this cab driving course, and he basically said to me, what a great idea. He said, honestly, Danny, this is going to take off for you. He said, set up your own website, set up your social media. It will take a long time. And ever since then, he's kind of been my mentor, and he's just been giving me great advice along the way. And I've just thoroughly enjoyed it each week as it's gone by.
That's great to hear. So how many years is it now since you made the transition into doing tours as well as driving people from place to place?
So I've been a London taxi tour guide for 5 years now, and I'm so glad I've done it. It gives me a lot more variety in the job and just showing people around. And as my good friend Richard once said, it's a job where people are generally pleased to see you. And I like that.
I like that too. That's splendid. Right, Greg, over to you. What's your story? How did you become a black cab driver, and then how did you become a black cab tour guide?
So in my late teens, early 20s, I was a young, flashy real estate guy. And I thought I was the bee's knees. And the office manager job came up when the office manager left, and I applied for it, and I got passed over. And I was really unhappy that I got passed over. My father is a black cab driver, and I thought, well, let's give this a go. And the rest is history on that one. So it did take me 4 years to do the knowledge. I was still working. So, doing it in your spare time is quite a lot. Some people say it's the equivalent of a university degree. And so that was in February 98 when I got my badge. So when I did my exams, they were still at the old PCO building in Penton Street, Islington. And similar to Danny's story, a couple of my guys, the examiners, one guy got up and picked up about a pile of about 10 files and then just threw them heavily down on the floor while I was mid-flow giving the directions and the route. And another one threw a pencil at me and just hit me on the side of here. So, Palestra was a little bit easier going. It got a bit softer than... I can't believe it took me so long to get into the tour guide business because, the process of learning 20,000 streets, 15,000 places, the process that your brain goes through, as soon as you've got your badge, you're then still thirsty and hungry for the brain to keep learning. So immediately I was reading about London's history, and it took me a long while to realise that I could marry the two together. So I did the cab guide course run by the worshipful company Hackney Carriage Drivers in 2017 and started tour guiding straight away after that. I had a contact and he said to me, the best thing is to just do a tour straight away. Don't worry about if you're inexperienced. The best thing is to just jump straight in. And I did. So literally summer of 2017, and we're all right up to COVID. I was getting a good 3-4 tours a week, and then COVID hit. And that's when I decided to apply for the City of London course. And I did the City of London course during COVID. Most of it was on Zoom. And then just towards the back end, again, we were allowed to be out and about. So my year was 2021. So I've been a Green Badge City of London since 21. And then since COVID, I'm so happy because it's something I love, meeting people from around the world, showing them my London, making them love the city the way I love it, meeting all different kinds of people. And so I've pretty much now, it's good 75-80% of my week is tours.
Danny, can you tell me a bit more what the tours tend to entail? How are they different from the walking tours that someone like me gives?
I would say the taxi tour is a lot different to a walking tour. And the reason I say that is because it gives you more of an overview of London. In a taxi tour that you should be given the story of London, the history of London, but also you get to see a lot on average, around 4 hours of seeing the main sites of London. If you're doing a classic tour, of course. I do sometimes say to my customers that if you wanted a more detailed description of the specific area you want to find out about, then the walking tour's for you. But if you've got a short amount of time in London and you just want to get a real quick feel and get some itineraries going of your stay in London, then the taxi tour is the way forward for that person.
Do they also feel that being in the black cab is a very iconic and quintessential thing to do on top of that?
Most definitely. Just a few years ago, there was quite a few other vehicles that the taxi trade could use. As these new electric vehicles have started to come in with the fantastic panoramic glass roof, a lot of the customers, when they request a booking, they specifically ask for an electric London black cab. And it's honestly the most purpose-built tour guiding vehicle you could ever imagine. When I first got this vehicle back in 2019, I wasn't even thinking about doing a course to be a London tour guide. And I didn't realise how much of a godsend this glass roof above the customer's head would be. It really does help, especially if it's pouring down with rain. Because if it is pouring down with rain, I do give the customers the option: would you like to get out here, or would you like to sit inside and we can commentate for here? And usually it's the second, the latter.
Greg, are these experiences sounding familiar to you?
Yeah, I echo what Danny's saying there. A large percentage of our customers are American, and, you know, they get the value of being here for a short space of time. And just going back on this 4-hour classic tour, we go from the Tower of London all the way across to the Royal Albert Hall. This is a large area. We give them the history. London was born 2,000 years ago, Roman invasion. 1,000 years later, Westminster is born, the Abbey, Parliament, the royal household. They get so much in a 4-hour tour. So ideal for a short time in London, ideal for your first arriving day to get your bearings and then think, oh yeah, I want to go back there and we'll spend an hour there. So they get a really good large amount of history and history highlights and all the classic sites. The vehicle, going back there, I started in the older diesel style taxi. Now, when it rained in those, you could not keep the windows clear of mist. The intercom was very poor. So you would get lots of comments like, I can't hear you, can you speak up? Wait a minute, we can't see anything. So with the new electric vehicle, you can put the aircon on, you can keep the glass demisted, they can see everything, the intercom's brilliant. So yeah, purpose-built vehicle. And lots of families in America, they're from places where they don't have a professional taxi service, and so it's a big thing. They're bringing their kids, you know, for the first time, getting in a famous London taxi. This is a big part of why they book us. They get the great fun and the great experience from a Londoner in a London cab and all the London classic sites.
Do they, I'm guessing, take tons of photographs of the cab itself, not just what you're seeing outside?
Yeah, exactly that. So they always want to get a photo with them or with me, with the vehicle at a couple of different locations. One of the best photos, fun enough, is getting the family still in the taxi and the back door open. You get a nice shot of the family sitting in the cab with the glass panoramic roof, maybe with an iconic site just poking out above on the roof there. It makes a superb photo, and they love that.
Now, last week, Greg was driving children from London's hospitals all the way to Disney World. It's one of the many charitable things that black cab drivers do. And this culture of benevolence goes back hundreds of years. Greg, can you tell me a little bit more about the drive you did last week and also just the history of the benevolence in the London cab trade as well?
Yeah, London taxis are officially the world's oldest public transport, going all the way back 365 years to Oliver Cromwell. And from day one, we obviously need to be working and earn an income for our families, but we're always there, and we've always been benevolent for the lady that can't get to the supermarket, or London's children that are in hospitals receiving treatment for life-limiting and chronic illnesses that make their day-to-day life a little bit unpleasant. So the Magical Taxi Tour is a trip that started in 1994, around a similar time to Disneyland Paris opening. And I've just been on the 30th trip this last weekend. This is 93 taxis, all with 2 children in the back and a parent or a carer. City of London Police Escort, French Gendarmerie Nationale Police Escort, AA vehicles in case something goes wrong with the vehicles, and ambulances. Now, this is key. These kids are in between treatments, mostly for cancer and for other debilitating illnesses. They wouldn't necessarily be able to undertake this trip on their own with their families. It's because we've got such a big support in terms of medical support that they can make the trip, because it's quite a hectic trip. If something was to go wrong and a child became unwell, we've got trained London Ambulance NHS service with us, and they can be looked after right there and then. And just to reiterate, we're moving 400 people from London, picking them up in the hospitals, all congregating at Canary Wharf for a big breakfast, driving to the Dover port and getting on a ferry, then driving from Calais in France to Disneyland Paris. This is massive. It's huge. So we need to make sure everybody is looked after and that we're all safe together, and the police keep us in a convoy and they keep us rolling. It's monumental, the overwhelming fulfillment and feeling you get from seeing kids have a great day in the park and they come to life and they're smiling and they're happy. Yeah, I mean, I'm coming all goosebumps now.
Well,
Amazing.
Greg, you sent me some pictures from it afterwards, and it moved me to tears as well. And I'm going to be putting a link in the description of this podcast for you to find out more, folks, because it really is something wonderful. And it is, what's that thing that Shakespeare said about, and so goes a good gesture in a weary world, or something like that. That's what it felt like. It's just a beautiful, positive, wonderful thing. Danny, I want to talk to you now about people you've had in the cab. Greg mentioned that sometimes someone in need's going to jump in the cab and you say, do you know what? This time it's free. And you mentioned your very first trip was free, and thankfully it wasn't a long one.
Yes.
What other people have you had in the cab where you've gone, do you know what? This is on me?
One day when I was driving, it was completely chucking it down with rain, and I saw this man and lady, and they were actually just got married, and they just came out of a church, and it was just off the Bayswater Road. And so they jumped in, and the photographer jumped in. I could tell that it was a bit of a stressful time for them both. And on your wedding day, it can be quite a stressful day, even if it's sunny. So as I've taken them to their destination, it was about 10 minutes away. The lady's taking a few photos of them in the taxi, and I could tell they was having a stressful day. So I just said to them, I said, enjoy the rest of your day, and it's on me. And they really appreciated that. And off they went, and hopefully they enjoyed the rest of their wedding.
Yeah, you mentioned about a good luck thing. It does feel like a nice good luck gesture to the new married couple.
Definitely. It means a lot. It goes a long way because they won't forget about that. But what I love about the job is they call it a 5-minute best friend. When you're driving a London taxi, you literally, if it's a 5-minute journey, say like from King's Cross to Euston, you literally find out everything about that person's life, and they find out everything about yours. And you think, I wish you all the best. I hope it goes well. And then, but not only that, people actually get into a taxi for their own mental health. I always remember this one journey. It was from Liverpool Street Station. It was at 10 o'clock at night, and it was going to Hammersmith Station. So it was a pretty long job. And as we're going along, this gentleman wanted to talk to me about like how his kids left him, his wife left him, had an affair, and then literally went off to go off with another man. And he said to me at the end, he said, I do this journey once a month. And I said, oh, really? He said, yes. He said, it makes me feel better just so I can speak to someone about it because it's really troubling me. And I thought, well, you're welcome. And Greg will say to you also is, the London taxi is a confessions box, it's a therapy box, it's everything. One minute be a priest and the next you'll be like a therapist, but
or even a brothel.
Brothel. Yeah.
There is something about therapeutic about the fact that we're facing forward and that guy talking to you at the back can just open up because he's not having to look someone in the face. And that is very therapeutic. You can get stuff off your chest without someone's face giving an expression, sort of stopping you thinking, oh, I'm saying something wrong. You can get it all out. And so we do often become agony aunt for the 20 minutes journey.
Now, we've talked about you showing around tourists. We've also talked about the fact that black cab drivers have a tradition of giving free rides to people, for example, children in hospitals and various other people as well. I now want to talk about some of the more quirky or perhaps even famous characters that you've had in your cabs. Danny, does anyone spring to mind?
I think one of the funniest celebrities I think I've had in my cab is Suggs. And if you don't know who Suggs is, he actually was the lead singer for the group called Madness, which is a very popular London group. They've had many #1 hits.
Yes, most our British listeners to the podcast will, of course, be familiar with Madness. If you are perhaps an American listener, and I don't think they really cracked America, do check them out. If you're a younger listener, I would say Madness have got good vibes. I think we'd agree, right? Anyway, back to our story. So Suggs, the lead singer and I think one of the main songwriters, and just general, quite a character, shall we say. He got in your cab.
So we got in my cab. I picked him up from Lincoln's Inn Field, which is one of the oldest inns of courts, dates back from 1422. And as I picked him up, he's jumped in the cab, and I've instantly recognised him because of all the times I've watched him on YouTube with his songs and so forth. And as he jumps in, I said, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you, Suggs. So, it's an absolute honour having you on board." He said, "Yeah, nice to meet you." I said, "What have you been up to?" He said, "Well, I've just come out of my accountant and spoke to my lawyer just so I keep out of prison."
Fantastic.
And then on the journey on the way up there, he went to go to Soho. Now, Soho is known for its music and so forth, but he was going to meet some kind of producer, and I dropped him off there. I don't tend to bombard too many people with photographs, but I asked if I would love to have a photo of you, and he said, "Yeah, of course you can." And
lovely.
a lovely photo of him, me and Suggs.
Brilliant. Greg, has Suggs ever stepped in your car?
Funny you should mention that, Jeremy. I did see Suggs standing outside a pub, and he howled me as I was approaching the corner where the pub was on. Most pubs are on a corner, and he had a full pint in his hand as he's waving me. So I pull up, and he literally downs the pint in like seconds and jumps in and goes 2 minutes round the corner to the BBC. 20 minutes later, I've got the radio on, and I'm listening to Suggs on the BBC live. So that was, quite amusing. I've also had Bill Nighy in the cab, which was one of the funniest journeys I've ever given anyone in London. It was a hot summer's day. The windows were open, and quite literally at every junction you're stopping at, pubs on corners or cafes, everyone's recognising him. And he's playing to the crowd. So he's got his shades on, and he's going up to the window, and he's flicking the shades up and pulling his face.
So the window's open?
Yeah, because it was hot, and this was way back when the cabs were a bit older. The air conditioning weren't very good, not like this modern cab that I drive now. So the windows are open, and everyone is recognising him. And he's not trying to hide from this. He's playing to the crowd. Sometimes he's got up from the seat. He's got his whole head out the window, smiling and waving at people at the pubs or the cafes. Yeah, that was pretty hilarious. It was a good, fun trip.
You mentioned me earlier about Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, Gordon Ramsay, I picked him up, and he was going to his original restaurant in Chelsea, just past the Royal Hospital. And as we're approaching the restaurant, he says to me, driver, just stop there. So just before the restaurant, there's an alleyway that obviously leads round to the back of the kitchens. He jumps out. I see him walk down this alleyway, and I crept forward a little bit. And anybody that knows the restaurant, you can see clearly in the windows. It's almost like a house. And while I'm sitting there, I see Gordon Ramsay suddenly come out into the dining room in his chef whites, shaking hands with people as if he's been in the kitchen cooking their meals. And I've just picked him up the road and dropped him off there.
Oh, no, wait. Were even some fake stains on the...
Yeah, so that was a pretty funny one as well.
Well, I think that's a great one to end on, because basically I think one thing about you cab drivers, and you've proved this throughout this podcast, is you see behind the curtain. You see what's really going on, and you feel what's really going on. And that really moved me to hear that you also sort of double up almost as therapists and as a listening ear. And this has been absolutely lovely. So thank you, folks, for coming on for this episode. That is a big thanks to Danny McIntyre.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And, of course, a big thanks to Greg Smith.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And a big thanks to you, the listener, for tuning in. As always, if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe or follow, whatever the term is, on your podcast app, and also click like or 5 stars if you haven't done that yet. Until the next episode, take care and cheerio.